This video is about vulnerability, and I have used the term daring greatly, which I've taken from a best-selling book by Brené Brown. When I came across Brené Brown's work, I was quite excited by it because it gave a lot more kind of information or another angle of looking at growth mindset, because ultimately growth mindset is about putting yourself in uncomfortable positions in order to increase your learning power and to gain that experience and that learning that is going to help you to grow as an individual and grow your intelligence. And Brené Brown, her work, she's a researcher into shame and vulnerability. Now, it's the vulnerability bit that I am particularly interested in with my growth mindset hat on, because when you are going to be learning new things, you are going to be in a position of vulnerability. And that's often why people fall into the fixed mindset, because they're trying to get away from being vulnerable or feeling vulnerable. So her work is hugely interesting, and she talks about showing up and letting yourself be seen. So it's that courageousness to kind of put yourself in positions that you don't feel entirely comfortable. So for example, if you're creative, putting your creative work out there can feel like an emotional roller coaster that you're on. You're putting yourself in that vulnerable position. It's that feeling of feeling naked in front of people because you're not quite sure how they're going to react. And a lot of people don't want to feel like that, but it's only through having those moments of being vulnerable, and that's what she explores, that we do start to really grow as individuals and be successful. So I have chosen a passage from her writing, so this is fairly near the beginning of the book, that I think is really kind of pertinent to us at the moment. She says, vulnerability is not weakness, and the uncertainty, risk and emotional exposure we face every day are not optional. Our only choice is a question of engagement. Our willingness to own and engage with our vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of our fear and disconnection. One of the things that I talk about in one of the other videos, I think it might be the one on creativity, is about how we seem to be moving through a moment of fear, which kind of struck us at the beginning of all of this. And we're moving into that period of learning. So people are learning to feel like okay with being a bit vulnerable and finding ways to find that courage to allow them to be vulnerable. I think a difference between Brené Brown's thinking about vulnerability and where we are at the moment is that she talks about it being a position that we should put ourselves in more readily because of the great impact it can have on our own lives. Whereas in terms of where we are feeling vulnerable, and I'm sure a lot of you like myself are feeling vulnerable at the moment, we have been forced into that position. It's not because we've chosen to put ourselves there because we know that it can grow us. It's because this situation has happened, and we're being forced to sit within that situation. But I think there are definite parallels that can be drawn between the two. And the main one for me is the idea that through vulnerability, we can find this courage. And maybe it's that part of that that is why I'm going back to the mindset skills and seeing that as a very mental strategy to help my mental health. So it's about what is in our control that we can choose. Well, we can choose how to respond to those things that are in our control. And it's through the response that we can both find and we can project to other people that sense of courage. And there are a lot of people, maybe at the tops of organisations, within your own companies, your own teams, within your families, where you need to project this idea of courage in order to keep everybody going. So people can use vulnerability to positive effect, and find courage through that vulnerability. And I think that's a feeling that was captured by the Queen in her address recently, where she was addressing the nation through this crisis. One of the things that the Guardian put together about that speech, they said that the palace could have chosen to play it safe, stressed unity and given thanks it would have served. This was a different, more ambitious broadcast designed to reassure and inspire. And I think that idea of reassuring and inspiring was to help build that sense of courage and that recognition that we are all vulnerable and we're all in this together. We're all kind of standing naked together. So yeah, I think I'm in touch with this feeling of vulnerability as well in what I'm doing now, because for a long time, I mean, I've been working with mindset now for the last 9 years, and it started off from a place of working in the classroom with children and forming that culture within the classroom. But it's now kind of becoming a bigger thing because I'm thinking about my own daughter, so parenting in a growth mindset way to instill those values, and also thinking about it from my own life, because particularly after becoming a mum, I have found myself feeling very vulnerable and having to use my own growth mindset to kind of get me through some of the moments that as a parent are particularly challenging and difficult. But it's even more than that. It's on an everyday general level. In order to function, a growth mindset is actually really, really helpful. And it's being able to spot when you are falling into more of a fixed mindset that you can start to recognize things and change things. So I'm using this opportunity to vlog and blog. I'm putting a name and a face, a face behind Growth Mindset by KJ Walton. Whereas before I've kind of stepped a little bit further back from the social media, I've now kind of come to this realization that in order to kind of spread my message and be more effective in that, but also at this current moment, try to help people to see it as a tool that can help you to get through this. Because there is a lot of mental health issues that are going to stem from this, and it is can be quite powerful if you really engage with it. And hopefully by the time you've seen all of these videos and done a bit more delving into the blogs and the website, you will have a better understanding about mindset. And even if you don't realise it, it might be starting to ebb into your life when you notice certain things happen, or you're thinking about a certain event might have changed slightly. So I do hope there's some positives, and so it helps you to gain that insight as to what mindset is all about and how to put it in action. But it does very largely link to our ability to withstand and be resilient to being vulnerable, which actually when we're out of this situation is something that can help us to progress and be more successful in life, because we can embrace and engage with that vulnerability.